1 week later, Earth stood still. For the first time in generations, the galaxy wasn't watching a war. It wasn't watching a scandal. It wasn't watching an eclipse. It was watching a wedding. The wedding. Every major news network carried the broadcast. Every civilized world aired it. Billions upon billions of people watched. The merging of House Reach and House Arcturus, the largest dynastic union in modern history. 9 planets, countless fleets, trillions of credits. 2 of the most influential rulers in the galaxy. And somehow, the entire event felt strangely personal. The ceremony took place in the Hall of Unity, the oldest ceremonial structure on Earth. A building so historic that many believed it should have been considered a world wonder. Massive white pillars stretched toward a vaulted ceiling decorated with scenes from humanity's history. Ancient Earth, the expansion, the first colonies, the founding of the empire. And now, another piece of history was about to be added. Outside the hall, crowds filled entire districts. Celebrations stretched for kilometers. Food stalls, musicians, public screens, fireworks prepared for later that evening. The atmosphere felt closer to a planetary holiday than a wedding. Inside the preparation chambers, however, things were slightly more chaotic. Lyra stood frozen, completely frozen. A palace attendant adjusted part of her outfit. Another fixed her hair. A third checked final details. Lyra looked horrified. "I still don't understand why me?" One of the attendants laughed, because the queen asked. That answer wasn't helping. Several minutes earlier, Celine herself had appeared. The queen had approached Lyra personally. "No ceremony, no royal formalities, just honesty. I'd like you to be my bridesmaid." Lyra blinked. "What?" Celine smiled. "I'd like you beside me." Another pause. "If that's all right?" Lyra stared, then stared some more. Then immediately accepted. Not because of the title, not because of the honor, because she genuinely liked Celine. The realization hit later, followed immediately by panic. Now she stood preparing for the ceremony while questioning every life choice that led her here. Meanwhile, Pines was somehow even worse. The future best man stood in another room staring into a mirror. A suit covered him from head to toe. He looked uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable. The man pointed toward Kenny. "I hate this." Kenny adjusted his own formal attire. "You look fine. I look responsible. You are responsible." Pines looked horrified. "Don't say things like that." Darius laughed from nearby. The older man looked significantly more comfortable. The uncle had spent the last hour watching Pines argue with tailors. It had been the most entertaining part of his week. Eventually, the call came. It was time. The music began. The doors opened. The ceremony started. And across the galaxy, billions watched. The emperor himself stood at the center of the hall. Official robes, ceremonial crown, imperial regalia. The ruler of humanity looked proud, very proud. The broadcast drones floated through the chamber, capturing every moment. The emperor raised his hands. The hall fell silent. "My fellow citizens," his voice echoed through the ancient structure. "Today is not merely the joining of 2 people. The galaxy listened." The emperor continued. "It is the joining of ideals. It is the joining of 2 houses. And perhaps most importantly," the emperor smiled, "it is proof that our future can be built upon trust rather than fear." The words carried weight because everyone knew exactly who he meant. The emperor looked toward Kenny, the former Eclipse champion, the founder of Reach, the man who saved his life. Then toward Celine, the queen of House Arcturus, the woman who chose her people over power. The emperor smiled. "I have had the privilege of watching both of these individuals become leaders." Another pause. "And more importantly," he laughed softly, watching them slowly realize everyone else knew they were in love before they did. The entire hall erupted into laughter. Even Kenny smiled. Celine looked embarrassed. The emperor appeared entirely too pleased with himself. The ceremony continued. Vows were exchanged, promises made. Not political promises, personal ones, the sort that mattered, the sort worth keeping. Eventually the emperor smiled, then spoke the words the entire galaxy had been waiting for. "By the authority vested in me as Emperor of Humanity." The hall became completely silent. "I officially unite House Reach and House Arcturus." The emperor grinned. "You may kiss." The cheering nearly shook the building apart. Outside, entire city blocks erupted. Across the galaxy, celebrations exploded. Fireworks launched, crowds cheered, news anchors lost their minds, and for a brief moment, humanity had something positive to focus on. The celebration afterward lasted well into the evening. Music filled the hall. Politicians mingled with soldiers. Rulers mingled with civilians. The emperor somehow ended up participating in a drinking contest. Nobody was entirely sure how. Pines later claimed it was historical. Then came the speeches. Several important figures spoke. The emperor, Darius, a few governors, then finally, Pines. The room immediately became nervous, including Kenny, especially Kenny. Pines stood before hundreds of guests and trillions watching across broadcasts. He looked at the crowd, then at Kenny, then at Celine. Silence. Everyone waited. Pines cleared his throat. Kenny once threatened to shoot me. The hall erupted into laughter. Pines pointed. True story. Another pause. To be fair, he pointed toward Kenny. I deserved it. More laughter. The speech continued. Funny, heartfelt, ridiculous, perfect. By the end, several guests were crying. Several were laughing. One somehow managed both. Even Celine wiped tears from her eyes. The speech ended with Pines raising a glass to the only two people stubborn enough to survive themselves long enough to get married. The hall cheered. Hours later, the celebrations finally began slowing. The guests retired. The broadcasts ended. The fireworks faded. And for the first time all day, Kenny and Celine found themselves alone. The newlyweds stood together overlooking the lights of Earth. Neither spoke immediately, just enjoyed the moment. Eventually, Celine leaned against him. I have a request. Kenny smiled. Already? The Queen laughed. Already. A pause. When we go home, another. I want Reach to be home. Kenny looked toward her. Celine smiled softly. The main planet. I want to live there with you. The answer came instantly. Okay. The simplicity surprised her. That's it? That's it. Celine laughed, then kissed him. The stars of Earth glittered overhead. The future suddenly felt bright, far away, on the opposite side of the galaxy. Lord Rain watched the wedding broadcast replay. The ceremony had ended hours ago. Yet he continued staring at the screen. Silent. Cassian sat nearby, equally silent. Neither looked pleased. The final statistics remained displayed. House Reach, 9 planets, unified, stable, growing, powerful. Lord Rain slowly turned the display off. Silence settled. Then came the realization. 9 planets. 9. Not temporary alliances, not promises, not trade agreements. 9 worlds, 1 banner, 1 ruler, 1 army, 1 purpose. Cassian finally spoke. He's stronger than us. The words felt impossible, yet neither denied them. Lord Rain clenched his fists. He shouldn't be. Cassian looked toward the darkness. But he is. The room became quiet. Then something changed, something dangerous. Paranoia. For the first time, they weren't planning how to beat Kenny. They were planning how to survive him. Research projects accelerated, experimental programs expanded, new technologies approved, cloaking systems, enhanced soldiers, prototype weapons, defensive fortifications, anything, everything. The fear had finally reached them, and it was eating them alive. Lord Rain stared toward the stars, toward Reach, toward Kenny, toward the future, and for the first time in many years, he genuinely wondered whether his dynasty would survive. The wedding had ended, but the war was only just beginning.